Welcome to PG Excursions, Travel with a Purpose, So You Want to Go to Africa podcast. I'm your host, Tanya D. Woods, attorney at law, and
I'm Lauren Lowry, certified international property specialist.
And welcome to a podcast for those in the African diaspora who want to visit their ancestral home, hosted by two sisters who know how to transform a simple trip abroad into a cultural bonanza.
Full of tips from our own travels to Africa, plus tips from expert guests to everyday travelers to ballers on a budget.
Let's get started.
Let's go.
Well, hello and welcome. You are with Tanya D. Woods and Lauren Lowry with PG Excursions, Travel with a Purpose, So You Want to Go to Africa podcast. We are your hosts on this episode of So You Want to Go to Africa, and we're here today with our really great friend, Joli from Cape Verde. Lauren, tell us more about Joli.
Joli Moniz is a wonderful travel professional who is from Cape Verde and planned an unbelievable trip in 2022, 2021, I can't even remember now, with me and our good friend and soror, Alice Rooks. Joli was referred to us by a Cape Verdean professional here in Chicago. And we had a flawless experience in Cabo Verde, a wonderful island. I think probably one of the closest islands to the United States, African island. And Joli knows all about it. She has lived in the United States. And are you an American citizen also, Joli?
I am.
Yeah. So Joli, tell us a little bit about her background. I mean, we always want to begin with history here. Where are you born? Where are you from? Sort of history and how you got into the travel game.
Okay. Good questions. So I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, where there is a significant Cape Verdean American community. And I was born to second generation Cape Verdean American parents. So my roots actually go far back to the late 1800s, early 1900s, when my great-grandparents on both sides came over to the States. I was raised in Connecticut, but I also spent many years in New York. So I'm definitely an East Coast girl, and I visited Cape Verde for the first time at the age of 15, thanks to my parents. And my dad had already been a few times, and that cemented it for me. I grew up with the culture heavily in the household, but in Connecticut, there weren't many of us Cape Verdeans. So we'd go to the Rhode Island for, weekends to visit family, and I'd see the culture there. But in Connecticut, it was really just inside of our house with the music, the art, the foods, some of the dancing, and a lot of some of the words and phrases as well in Cape Verdean Creole, and references to the old country. Even like the bedtime stories my dad would tell were about the old country. So I grew up loving it and feeling proud of who I am. But until I was able to come to the country, it wasn't as how was it? Not real, but I don't know how to explain it. It just became even stronger of a love affair for me. And I always said, one day I'll spend like a summer or do a 3-month sabbatical like my dad had done. My dad's also an attorney, Tanya. And and I said, one day, I want to come back as well and spend a significant amount of time so I could learn how to Papia Creole, because without the language, there's a disconnect. And I was aware of that. And I just wanted to be even closer to my culture. So years and years went by, had 2 careers, one in television production and photography, and the second was in educational administration. Okay. And you know how it is in the US with careers. What time? Right. What job is going to let you leave for 3 months? None. You're lucky if you get a two-week break, right? So that dream I kept deferring, and I just kept saying one day. And in the meantime, I visited a couple more times, never would want to leave. And then one day came in 2012. Here's the juice. I was engaged to be married to a nice Southern gentleman.
Always a guy.
Oh, right. always loved. And I was very much in love with him, but I also, as the wedding day approached, I realized that while I was about to, marry the love of my life at the time, I was going to lose a lot of everything else, like dreams I kept putting off, because he was is still a very practical person. I was going to stay in New York and, have the 1.5, 2.5 dog,
Yep,
children, dogs,
dog. Yep.
Westchester House, all of that. Beautiful. Nothing wrong with that. I still have dreams of having a family. It's just that I was going to give up my career dreams, my passions, my culture.
And we wouldn't want that.
Say that again?
We would not want that. No giving up of dreams. Certainly no giving up of the culture.
Thank you. So thank God I had what does it come to? I'm losing my English. I had one of those like epiphanies, a moment,
like Jesus moments is
what Jesus moment. Thank you. There you go. There you go. And it just hit me. And I look back and it was spirit, God, universe, my gut, whatever you want to call it, my ancestors, I don't know, but saying like, you can't do this. You need to be in Cape Verde right now. So I called off the wedding. I told my job that I was not going to be signing the contract for another year, and told my family, by the way, I'm moving across the ocean to Cabo Verde. I'm going home. And the plan was to go home for just 1 year, long enough to learn, how to speak Creole and kind of reset, figure out, did I want to continue in education? Did I want to stay in the US? And quickly realized, no, I did not want to leave this beautiful place. I had never been so alive or inspired or challenged in my life. And why would I leave all of that? So I stayed, and within several months, Aventati Tours was founded. That's it.
So that was a wonderful way to illustrate how you can be American born. And so oftentimes right now people are doing ancestry applications and trying to find out where they're from. But what a blessing for you to know where you were from. And as you said, for generations, and though your ancestors had come to this country for different reasons, you knew where you were from. And that's something that I met my first person who was also a member of my sorority over 30 years ago, who was from Cabo Verde. And that was the first time, that I was really that acutely aware. I'm like I wouldn't say a geography buff. I'm more of a curious person. So don't quiz me on stuff, but I remember in that little island hanging off the coast and wondering like, what's that little island? I wonder what that is. So when I finally met someone in my adult life who was actually from there, and she too is from the East Coast, from the community, the same state that you described. But it's a beautiful thing that you know where you're from and have the opportunity to go back. And what a rich story of your dad telling stories and having the language and the culture and the music in your home to be able to go back to. So, that's a wonderful sojourn from, a lot of folks' stories when they first become interested in Africa. Yours is very personal and very familial, which is a very different way of, having a connection to the motherland. So thank you for sharing that. And so you told us about your first trip. I am really interested to know, and I'm sure our listeners are too. Can you describe for us the smells, the scents, that first time when you set foot on what you knew was your homeland? Okay. And for those of you can't see her right now, but her eyes just rolled up into the back of her head. She threw back her head, her beautiful locks just cascaded down her shoulder. She went there, y'all.
Love it. I can be a little bit dramatic, but I love it. So real for me. Like I still remember that day. At the time, all the flights from the US were through the island of Sal. We actually have 10 islands. 9 of them are inhabited. So we would have to come and stop in Sal, which is now one of the most touristic or the most touristic island of Cabo Verde. And it's a flat island. It's very dry. It's one that is like one notch up above desert. So I remember landing, I remember seeing a lot of beige, like dry landscape, a little bit, just a couple of dots of green, and of course that blue ocean. And I remember this tattered flag like flapping in the wind, and I started to cry. I started to cry because the significance, even though I was only 15, the significance was not lost on me. I've also always been curious and always loved studying different cultures of the world, and eventually became an African-American studies major in college. And so
I was
even
a
at a young
minor,
age.
so my son is a
Okay.
major, so I dig it.
Yeah. But even at that young age, I knew it was huge that I am fortunate enough to know where my people came from, at least for several hundred years, right? Um, and to be coming back was just surreal. And even though the landscape flat and dry and it was underdeveloped at the time, it still was so beautiful to me. And then we landed eventually in Santiago Island, where I live now, the main island, and where the country was founded, the first major port of the slave trade, unfortunately. And it's mountainous too. It's green, or it has big areas of green, subtropical, ocean everywhere, mountains. And I just remember being struck by the beauty. I remember a smell that I still smell sometimes, especially in the countryside, the smell of burning wood. To make what they call like food na leña, which is like on firewood. So like the authentic cooking, and that smell still makes me smile. Or leaves burning when people are trying to clear the fields for agricultural purposes. The breeze constant, the smell of the ocean always near. I don't know. It's hard to describe.
Oh, you did a beautiful job. I can smell the wood. I can smell the salt sea air, as the song
Yes.
says, right? And see the blue of the ocean and all of that. That's exactly what I wanted you to describe for us. And those first impressions last a lifetime, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
When
Absolutely.
you
I wrote my
shared,
college essay about it.
yeah,
It was huge for me.
Lauren. So while Lauren's audio catches up with her.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Okay,
So, yeah, I think, it was so powerful that you say that you immediately started crying when you touched soil there. And that's the experience of a lot of African Americans when they go to the continent. Just so happy to be there. Something comes over you. I think my first experience was in Egypt, and immediately the ancestors were like, "Where have you been? Where have you
Right.
been? What are you doing for others?" And that had never happened to me ever. You know what I mean? It was like, and you travel all over the world. And it was like, oh, this is different and this is important. And let's realize this. So Aventande tours. So you're there.
Sorry.
Yeah, serious body chills. You're
Mhm.
absolutely right. Yeah. So Aventande tours, we're going to quickly pivot to that because you decide you uprooted your entire life and decided you're going to create this company, this group that's going to really help a lot of people, really add value to a lot of people to, their at least thoughts about sort of traveling to Cabo Verde. Tell me again, give me sort of the backstory. You mentioned it a bit, but give me the backstory. I'm going to start this. And then how did it go? How is it starting a company? You're an American, you're used to Western things and ideas.
Right,
How is it
right.
starting a company in Africa? How is it moving it forward? How easy, how tough, pros and cons?
Okay, so first I'll say that first year I had a lot of visitors come. People were thinking, we have to take advantage. Joli will only be there a year. Let's go visit.
Right.
So his family came, and it gave me an opportunity to actually show them around. So while I wasn't a guide per se, I was sharing the bit I knew about the country, sharing, authentic hospitality, trying to show them the culture, the real culture, introduce them to people that I had met. And so it was very much from a personal space. I guess more probably anecdotal information, but also historical information as well. And I just really loved it. I loved it. And one of my visitors, a girl named Giselle from Chicago, actually.
Wow.
Not from, she's from Jersey, but she lives in Chicago.
Okay.
Actually, she's a phenomenal woman. She had gone to my all-girls high school in Connecticut, and she's of Caribbean descent. She came to visit twice in a 2-3 month span.
Oh, wow.
And that first year, and she's brilliant business mind, and also always about community. So she planted the seed for me. She told me, like, Joli, you've shown me such a good time here. I feel like I feel comfortable here. I feel like I've gotten to know so much about your country. And it's because of you. Have you ever thought of doing this? You should be getting paid for this. and it just was
Nice.
like an aha moment.
Yes.
I already knew I didn't want to leave, right? I already knew I had to find a way to make a living.
Mhm.
And it hit me that, whoa, like I never thought about tourism as a career path, but tourism is such a big, wide hub. And everything I've ever done, from like photography, TV production, those are ways to market the country, right? Dealing with and learning about and sharing culture, education. I do school trips, service. I love giving back. I started a foundation and also have students come and do service trips as well. Travel, obsession of mine. People, love connecting people, love supporting small businesses, particularly Black and women-owned businesses. So art, I'm obsessed with art. You see a piece behind me from Cape
Yes,
Verde.
it's a lovely piece for
So
listening
I
audience,
can
a beautiful
even,
abstract.
I can even promote Cape Verdean art, help the artists here, get more business from a new market. So, and I even get to design. I design an accessories line called Coisas de Cabo Verde, which means things from Cabo Verde in Criollo. So basically, literally everything I've ever loved doing, everything that I've ever done career-wise, I'm able to do under this title called tourism, hospitality. And it's just been incredible. So I started the company. I didn't even actually found it right away. First, I just started a Facebook page.
Okay,
Facebook
right.
page, had my cousin, a Cape Verdean American, design the logo and started to just pump out photos of the country and consistently, slowly. And I had my first official group of 5 that spring. But it took
Mm,
years. It took years. I always had it like as a side business because I had to pay the bills, right?
right.
I was teaching English also, which is always in need in other countries. And it
Mhm.
allowed me to meet more people and to learn more Creole. But it wasn't easy. It was not easy at all because of many reasons. Working as a person who didn't grow up here, with the language not being innate. Um, it's still an African country, so it's very much male dominated, less and less every day, but still. Um, Starting to try and attract American clientele because Cape Verdean travel has always been looking toward Europe. Europe is
Yes.
closer. It's
Mhm.
easier, right? People in Europe know about Cabo Verde. Americans, for the most part, do not. So trying to educate people about this country that they didn't even know about, trying to dispel these myths, these stereotypes we grow up in America with about what Africa is, this place of even my family, my grandparents. My dad had to try and convince, and finally did, my mother's father to come back home because he had grown up hearing about all the poverty and the years
Mm,
of droughts and famine and people dying in the streets, literally. And that's why a lot of Cape Verdeans had to emigrate initially just to survive. And that was the case for my great grandparents as well. So
mm.
trying to tell people that this is not the case anymore, that, Africa in general is the most incredible part of the country, of the world. Cabo Verde
Absolutely.
is rich in so many ways, not natural resources per se, but human capital, creativity, natural beauty, diversity, etc. So I had my job cut out for me for sure, but
Okay.
just consistently working at it and just doing what I loved over the years, little by little, word of mouth spread. And I was able to make it a full-time business. And the funny thing is that right before I made the decision to stop trying to, do English classes on the side or anything else and focus my all on tourism in my country, in my company, it was a big risk because I'm like, okay, now if I stop everything else, like I've got to survive just on this. But I
Right.
did it, and I dove in with faith. And this was at the end of 2019. 2020 was looking like it was going to be the best year ever. So I was like, okay, this is amazing. So excited. We had university signed up. We had lots of clients ready to come. And then COVID,
COVID,
pandemic.
yeah, the great equalizer.
And everything just froze. And one by one, all of those groups for the year, almost all, postponed or canceled. And I was like, oh, what now? But I'll
Right.
pause. I've been talking too much.
No, no. And you know what really struck me was the fact that you did all that packing up, and we've talked to some folks about what it's like to make that decision and kind of pack up everything and then move, and then, you know, not really know how it's all going to work out, but you've
Right.
seemingly obviously made a success out of it. But one thing I want to pull at a little bit, you talked about your grandparents and other folks in your family, in your tribe, who were not convinced that this was the way to go. How does that, you know, how did that make you feel then? And
Mm.
are they still around now to see your success? And can you tell us about that?
Unfortunately, my last grandparent, my Nana on my mom's side, passed away some years ago, but I was already in Cabo Verde and I had already started the company and was starting to do very well. So she was already proud of me. And I know without a doubt that all of them are with me in spirit and watching over me and probably led me here. Like, I don't think it's any accident that I ended up here and have flourished. I'm getting emotional, sorry. I was blessed with beautiful grandparents. But my grandfather, when he did come and make that trip with us, was it my first trip? He cried too when he came, and he thanked my dad,
Wow.
buddies and business partners as well. And he thanked my dad for forcing him to come so that he could see his homeland for himself and see that it actually is incredible, despite everything he had heard and all the sad, heavy stories, you know?
Yeah.
I'd say over the years, yeah, because of social media in large part, more and more Cape Verdean Americans especially have come back. And it's become a movement of sorts. And so as they continue to spread the good word and post photos, you know, more and more of us are realizing, wait a minute, you know, despite our great grandparents, our great grandparents' experiences and, you know, the hard past in history, it's a country that's thriving. It's doing well. You can live a beautiful life there. You can have quality of life tenfold. So if nothing else, at least visit, take advantage of the fact that we know where we came from, which is a blessing, of course. And so I'd say most people have realized and continue
That
to
is
realize and come back and spread the word. Although I do have one uncle who's stubborn and still teases me and says he'll never come to this country of rocks and dust. But
Oh my God. I mean,
But you know, that's
okay.
how, go ahead, Lauren.
that's the same thing. Like my father's from the South, from Alabama.
There it
And
is.
once
Yeah.
he left Alabama, he was like, I'm not going back to Alabama. He
Yeah.
came back
Yeah.
for 2 funerals. That was it. He was out of
Wow.
there and just didn't care about that. But what you're describing is exactly why we're having this podcast series and why we have PG Excursions. You know, we want people to realize that this is their homeland. It is, you know, you have to
Right.
convince people to come back sometimes, say, look, this is actually where you're from. You know what I mean? You weren't, you know, unfortunately, you know, for people of African descent, you know, I
Right.
think we need to rethink sort of what we consider home and maybe
Right.
sort of challenge ourselves to think about other places that might be more of our homeland and how we may feel when we arrive there.
Absolutely.
You
Give me
absolutely gave
chills.
us you gave us some great information about investments. Harriet also, you know, I guess is planning trade missions and things like that. But when we talk about, as you know, I am very focused on people of African descent investing in the
Mm,
African continent, whether it be for vacation or, you know, simply as an investment tool, maybe commercial opportunities,
mhm,
things that are needed in these
mhm.
places that we could contribute to. Talk to us a little bit about what's going on in Cabo Verde and what you see happening, because I did see some Chinese investment going on in there. And, you know, maybe if there's some others that we can contribute more to, if the word is out, then maybe we could do
Right.
something else.
For sure. Okay, so I'll first say that yes, there is a lot of investment being made here now. I see construction left and right, and that's the case on the west coast of the West Coast, West Africa in general, like neighboring countries, Senegal. I see it there everywhere, you know. People have finally opened their eyes to the beauty, the richness of this continent, the potential. And so I do see, unfortunately, Chinese investing a lot and coming, they've hit all of our islands. And I say, unfortunately, not against the people themselves, but the country, and it's so systematic. It's like, colonialism continued.
Well, I'm glad you said
Don't
that.
trust the intentions. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, not to cut you off, but I really want to let that hang there for a second, right? For everybody who's listening. Because we use these words and you were very intentional about the word that you chose. And so I just want us to pause on what that feels like.
Right.
As descendants of the diaspora all over the place, but this is your homeland. Like, you didn't have to do a genealogy or swab the inside of your cheek to figure out where you're from. So this is very, very personal.
Yes.
It would be as if you were watching your block or your neighborhood, people coming in and just buying up houses. What does
There
that
you
sound
go.
like,
That
right?
sounds real familiar,
So,
right?
come on, somebody. That's not so far flung, and it
At
has
all.
nothing to do with being anti-Asian or anything like that. That's
Exactly.
what we talk. Those are facts, right? Gentrification happens and continues to happen, and this form of neocolonialism is happening. And
Yes.
have new colonists, so
Exactly.
call it something else,
Exactly.
or just like it's just business. I'm sure that's what they said back in the 1600s,
There
like
you go.
business that ain't personal,
We were just
Right.
property, so it couldn't be
Right.
personal because you're
let's
just
call
Folks
a
chattel.
name
always
what a
loses
thing
out.
is, right? So say that,
Exactly.
sis, say that.
Exactly. And then we get priced out. I see the locals here who were born and raised here getting priced out, which is even worse than me as an American-born Cape Verdean. I see the markets getting killed off because they're opening, they started with the mini markets with just like convenience stores of sorts. Then, because they have so many advantages from the government giving them tax advantages they should not have. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. To them being, they come together and they pool resources. So they share the cost of shipping, of distribution, so they can lower their prices big time and undercut the Cape Verdean owned places. And because when people don't have, they're going to stretch their little monies, right? Exactly. So they're going to go with the price is the cheapest. It's economy. But unfortunately, that means they're eventually losing out. Their shops are closing. So the Chinese have branched into furniture stores, metal and other like construction items. You name it, pretty much every grocery stores, and killing off other markets one by one. And it's just, I'm like, I can't believe I'm watching this happen. And it's happening so quickly. Buying up real estate, even
As an American,
sorry.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I get
No,
work too. So, this is my bad habit. But as an American, are you aware of inroads and pathways for African Americans who are interested in opening businesses or expatriating, or, so that, folks out there who are listening have an interest in wanting to, say, hey, this sounds like something I might want to invest in, not only for my own personal gain, but for the larger gain of our people.
There you go.
Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So in addition to travel, tourism, mainly to Cabo Verde, but also several other countries of the diaspora, over the years, people would come and fall in love with Cabo Verde. And most of my clientele, I'm happy to say, are people who look like us. And that is also intentional. So I'm so passionate about encouraging us to come back home, whether we know for a fact, like me, that we have Cape Verdean roots, or we know we came from the continent, and there's a decent chance your people came through these islands. Again, having been like the first major port of the slave trade, unfortunately. So I'm passionate about and help people relocate. We've had people successfully relocate, buy real estate, because that's one of the main ways that you can invest here. For sure.
That's nice.
What else? And find other investment opportunities as well. So it doesn't have to be in real estate. Like Lauren mentioned, it could be on a commercial end. It could be, counseling people, talking to folks about how they could start a business, because this is a small country, but if you do a niche business and you focus on something no one's ever done before, because it's such a new country. We got independence in 1975. It's new, and it's, to me, like a blank canvas, which is one of the reasons I love it. There's so much potential and opportunity here if you just come with ideas and willingness to work. So yes, I've been trying to get more and more of us to come back home, to not be cut out of what's happening, the beauty that's happening here, the building that's happening, the future. I do not want to see Europe or China buy out this beautiful country. I won't. So I'm trying to do my little part.
And we're going to do our part as well. I mean, however we can encourage others to think about opportunities there, big and small, to support the country, to support, a Black country. I think that's really sort of the important thing. And so, Joli, let's talk about your business a little bit more. What if someone's looking to come to Cape Verde, they call you, you're going to tell us your email address, websites, all the different things where people can contact you. What are the services you provide to those who are looking to take an adventure to Cabo Verde?
And before you start to answer that question, Joli, as she clears her throat, Cape Verde first. So a lot of our listeners have never been to Africa before. So that's why we say, so you want to go to Africa podcast. For folks who've never been to Africa before, why should they come to Cape Verde first?
Ooh, that's a great one. Okay.
That's a good
I can
question.
wax poetic about this country. All right. So I'd say, let's see, it's safe. It's extremely safe. It has a safe democracy. It's easy. I call Cape Verde Africa Light. So I think it's a great stepping stone to the continent. I think it's a great first country in Africa to explore. And it's easy because you do not have to have vaccinations. It's so safe here. You do not have to have a visa as an American citizen to stay up to 30 days. It's small, it's underpopulated. We have about 575,000 people spread out over 9 islands.
I think that's outside of Chicago, maybe.
Right. So you're not even dealing with like what people envision when they do picture the continent, Africa, crowds and traffic and chaos. No, it's so chill here. It's like the best of all worlds. So again, it's Africa, but with a little European flair, with island flavor and romanticism, I'd say. It's perfectly located in between North America, South America, Europe, and the African continent. So strategically, you can't get any better. It's the closest African country to the US. So it only, when we had our own airline functioning from the US and had direct flights out of Boston, you could get here in 6.5 hours. It's like going to parts of the Caribbean, St. Lucia, or
let me go get my fleet of planes and start that route.
There we go. We need that.
I just met a young lady who is, that's her goal. She's majoring in aeronautics now, and she wants a fleet of planes to privately fly folks to places like Cabo Verde in Africa. I'm so proud of her, but go ahead.
Tell her to keep us in mind. I love it.
Yes.
It's affordable here. So especially, I mean, imagine if you're taking your US retirement or you're a digital nomad working with, something that brings in euros or American dollars, you can live extremely well. Your money goes far here. It's modern, the infrastructure. For example, I haven't had any internet problems, and I'm now outside of the city of Praia. I'm now in sort of the countryside, the Cidade Velha, the old city, about 13 minutes from the capital, where the first port. So this is like in the heart of history. And even here in the countryside per se, I have, high speed 5G, fiber optic, Wi-Fi, nice, I think, beautiful, home. So you can really live well, and you can have modernity, but also nature, you know what I mean? So it's like this nice balance. Diversity here is incredible. So from all kinds of landscapes, like mountains to desert to flatlands to what else? Black sand beaches, white sand beaches.
Yes, the black sand beach was awesome. Yes, it was so beautiful, amazing. And something I had never seen before. Yeah, I didn't see that in Hawaii, even though I was in Hawaii and I saw some of the black sand, but it was very different. This was a different experience altogether. So it's worth taking that trip. Yeah.
Sure. And people,
you were going to tell us about you were going to tell us about your business. So
Okay,
now
so
that I, asked you to
now that
describe
you want to come to Cabo Verde, I hope.
well,
Yes,
I've
okay,
always wanted to do it. And so to be
nice.
clear, to set the record straight,
Okay,
I was going
okay,
someplace else, like right behind that. And then next thing I
okay.
know, they had booked the flight and they were gone. So
Oh,
I plan to get there, no doubt.
okay. I'll be waiting.
So tell us about your business.
So,
How
okay.
can people find you and what will they find and what services do you offer?
Okay, so Avantati Tours, the website is Avantati, AVONTADE dash tours.com. You can email me, avantaditours@gmail.com. We have Facebook page, we have an Instagram page. We first and foremost do offer private bespoke experiences. So I take time to talk to the person or the group in the beginning and get a sense of your travel style, the dynamics of the group, your interests, personalities, length of time, budget, etc., and then put together a proposal based on you. So highly personalized. Excuse me. We also again do school trips, service trips, family reunions, events, anniversaries, weddings, you name it, we can do it. So in addition to travel and other countries as well, like Guinea-Bissau, Senegal, Portugal, but from a decidedly African slant, Sao Tome and Principe, Morocco, East Africa, and I think that's it for now. So in addition to all of that, we also offer, again, relocation packages, real estate, investment assistance. We help others of the Cape Verdean diaspora become dual citizens, or if you're married to a Cape Verdean, or you could still, even if you don't have any roots, there are ways to become a citizen eventually. We help people do
Oh,
that.
wow. That's so important,
We,
Jolie. I want to sit there for a second because
okay,
in my studies, there was really no path to citizenship in any of the African countries, sort of
okay,
on the continent. And as
okay,
much as people said, oh, you can be, but you'd have to have some roots. Or you
okay.
would have to, maybe in Ghana right now, if
Mhm.
you are someone, a big landholder, if you have some big dough, you might be able to become a citizen and not have to do all these other things to buy and sort of invest. So are you telling me it's possible to be a dual citizen of Cape Verde and from America as an African, descended person? It's possible. How
It's
is that? Like, what
possible.
would you
It
have
is
to do?
a longer path if you don't have, roots per se. It's a longer path. And like Ghana, I guess, one path is to become a significant investor, but in something that you can't just buy a big mansion. You have
Right.
to invest in a way that helps the community. So if
Got
you were to like open a big organization or a school or something to give back, or
it.
you could establish residency and stay for many years and eventually become a citizen that way. So there are ways. Or just
Okay.
marry one of these beautiful people.
Listen,
I'm at it. I'm
listen. There were
been
some
Well, on
done.
that
beautiful
note,
people. Yeah.
well, it
It's
has been a wonderful time spending with you, Miss Jolie. I can't believe where the time has certainly gone. We could sit here with you and talk all day and
ditto,
still not
ditto.
have enough time to cover all the wonderful things about your mother country, Cabo Verde, Cape Verde, whatever you may call it. Call it all joy, as your name
Yes.
implies, right? So if you want to learn more about Jolie's travel business, you can find out more in the notes where all the information about her business will be posted. And we thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of PG Excursions Travel with a Purpose. So You Want to Go to Africa podcast. Lauren?
Please join us at pgexcursions.us and pgexcursions.net, our podcast and our streaming on YouTube. And all the information, including some excursions that Jolie will plan for others, will be on pgexcursions.com. We are actively and aggressively advertising some trips from all over Africa, from all the different types of purveyors that are going to Africa. The Chicago Association of Realtors is going to Ghana. We've got folks going to South Africa who are music buffs, people who love house music. So there's so many different things. Whatever you want to plan, Jolie, we're going to share the information with our listeners and our viewers the entire time. Thank you so much, Jolie. We appreciate you.
So much for having me. It
All
was
right,
such an
thanks.
honor and a lot of fun too.
Thank
Yeah.
you. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks for checking out the PG Excursions podcast. Please feel free to reach us at pgexcursions@gmail and pgexcursions.net.